People, Deluded, I'm back again. I've got a very special guest, Andrew, the legend that you are. Appreciate you for this quick turnaround and joining me, man. It's been a minute. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you? It's been a while, all right.
Too long, man. Too long. I'm good. I mean, it's a blessing. I mean, where Arsenal's concerned, I mean, on the face of it, we're second. But I mean, you're an Arsenal fan, you know everything in it. So we're gonna delve straight into it. But apart from Arsenal, I'm all good. Hope you're the same. Again, people, if you're listening, make sure you're following all of Andrew's content. Can't imagine you don't know about the platform that is Arseblog, but make sure you do. I want to ask you a question straight off the bat. Yeah, with everything that we've seen with Arsenal, where we are at this moment in time. Is it progression or is it regression?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one to start with, isn't it?
Exactly.
I mean, I think it's probably, this is maybe not an answer you're going to like, but it's somewhere in between, in the sense that I think when you, like last year, what we did in the title race and those, that run of like 16 wins in the last 18 games, I think it was only one defeat. That was pretty extraordinary, So I think there was always going to be the danger that we slipped a little from that, because those standards are really hard to maintain. Win 16
Exactly.
18 games is really tough for any team. But I think being where we are with all the things that we've had to contend with, like I don't think an Arsenal team 2 years ago could have coped with all the things that we've coped with this season, right? All the injuries and the red cards and suspensions and refereeing decisions, all those kinds of things. I think we're better able to cope with those now. So maybe that's progression, but in the sense of where we are in the league and maybe just how far away we are from Liverpool versus where we might have expected, a little bit of regression in that sense. But I think probably overall, this is a more mature team and a team better able to cope with some of the hassles that we've had. So, yeah, I think we're sort of somewhere in the middle in that respect.
I always say on my channel, it's almost, I don't want to get religious or blasphemous, but it feels like where the Premier League is concerned, it's almost like purgatory. It's like we're so good in so many metrics. I know people are not happy with Mikel Arteta and us not winning the Premier League, but for me, I don't think we need to behave like Arsenal relegation fodder and we're losing and all those sort of things. As you said, we're second. You wouldn't believe we've got 2 defeats this season. How do you feel about the draws, though, this season?
The draws. So games like
Fulham,
those ones.
Liverpool, Chelsea.
Yeah. Again, I think it's down to how little margin for error there is. I think we sort of expected maybe Man City to be the team again and not Liverpool to be the team. So I think the fact that it's Liverpool that's above us is vexing a few people,
Definitely.
But as if like this isn't a Liverpool team that's been brilliant for a long time,
They've only got Mo Salah.
Yeah, and the best player in the world at this moment in time. Like, is that the difference between this kind of slightly troubled Arsenal and this Liverpool team? Is that they've got this guy who can make a difference in those games, maybe where you draw, where we drop points. I was at the Villa game when we're 2-0 up, and you're thinking,
oh man,
we're gonna go and we're gonna win this, and then they get their couple of goals, and then at the end, it's these fine margins, isn't it? We have this goal disallowed for like a handball that nobody can really see. Is it handball? Is it not? It probably is, but like it's unlucky. You just kind of know that this season, if that was Liverpool, if that shot had hit off a Liverpool player, it would have gone in off his arse or would have gone in off his hip. It wouldn't hit. You know what I mean? And those are the small things that can make a difference, So maybe that's something that in the overall context of what we think about this Arsenal team and where maybe we need to improve, and all the talk of adding something to the forward line and bringing in a new striker, that could well be rooted in the fact that we're looking for somebody to make the difference in those tight games, because there are always going to be tricky games in the Premier League. There are always going to be teams who cause you problems, and Fulham, let's say, and Villa to an extent are a couple of teams who've given us some issues in the last couple of seasons for whatever reason.
Remind me, man.
Another one, you know what I mean? So you do have these teams, and then you've got to find a way to cope with that little difficulty, whether it's psychological or something else.
Where are you at then with our hopes at the Premier League title then? Because it's improbable, but it's not. It's impossible. It's improbable. Sorry, but it's not necessarily impossible. We need a lot to go right, though.
Sure, we do. Absolutely. You know, it's one of those things where I think, you know, like you say, it's improbable, but not impossible. Would I be completely surprised if at the end of the season somehow we managed to do it because we've overcome all this adversity? No, I wouldn't be that shocked. But I wouldn't put a great deal of money on it either. I'm not going to bet my house on that happening. So I think, you know, we are where we are. There's 13 games to go. We're hanging on in there. We're having to dig really deep, aren't we? You know, we've got no strikers. Havertz sideline, Jesus sideline. We've got Saka and Martinelli on the sideline.
Tomiyasu now.
Few weeks, Tomiyasu as well. Another one, maybe slightly different in the sense that he wasn't really part of things this season anyway, because he's been out for such a while. And we're having to find different solutions and find different players who can get us the goals that we need. And it was Mikel Merino the other day, and it might be somebody else on Saturday. You know, we're really trying very, very hard to deal with all the problems that we have. So that gives me a bit of hope, a bit of optimism that the players and the team and the manager, they're not sort of
They really want it.
by this. You know what I mean? Because you could, you know, if you lose Saka and you lose Havertz and you lose Martinelli and you lose Jesus,
That's your whole front line.
You know, and what are you thinking if you're a player as well? You're thinking, oh man, like winning games is going to be really hard now. It's going to be much harder than it should be because we don't have some of our best players. But what I've liked about the attitude and the willingness to keep going is that it's evident. You know, they haven't downed tools. They haven't felt sorry for themselves. I don't think Mikel Arteta will let them feel sorry for themselves.
We ain't got time for that. It could get a lot worse.
Exactly. So I think that aspect of it has been quite encouraging to me. So it would be really, really improbable, but stranger things have happened in football. And we'll have to wait and see, you know, if Liverpool maybe just hit the skids a little bit, can we take advantage?
Do you think we have to? It's going to sound silly, but do you think we have to beat them at Anfield as a minimum if we are to win this title?
Probably. Looking at the fixtures, looking at where they might drop points, looking at how, you know, they talk about relegation 6-pointers all the time, don't they? When there's two teams down there that play each other, this is a title challenge 6-pointer. Hopefully it still is a really important game in that sense, you know, that we're not going to Anfield and it's pretty much done and dusted. It does feel like if we're going to overhaul them, we are going to have to go there and win. But, you know, let's remember that when Liverpool took points off us at home, I think the back four we ended with that day was pretty.
Lewis Skelly, Kivy. It was a makeshift at best.
It was quite makeshift, yeah, for sure. So, you know, they still didn't beat us that day with that back four, and maybe we'll have some players back, and maybe we'll have some attacking players available to us again, and hopefully we can go there and cause them some problems. But yeah, I think realistically, if we are going to overhaul Liverpool, beating them at Anfield, which is part of our history when it comes to title wins, let's not forget.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too, man. It is something I think we're going to have to do.
I think you're bang on the money, man. And I think, you know, when you mentioned the Liverpool game, I think, you know what, beyond the obvious, that's actually been like a tough pill for me to swallow. I look at how we conceded against Chelsea, how we conceded those 2 goals against, obviously, Villa, as you said, the whole Fulham game, you know, the VAR moment. It just feels like sometimes those fine margins have been out of our control. Sometimes they have. And it's not really annoying, but it's annoying because we've actually got a bloody good team. There's so much to be optimistic about. We just, for whatever reason, just can't get over the line. And again, I hope I'm wrong, but it looks like a 3rd season of obviously that. So then how do you look at the Champions League? Because I'm sure you've been asked it on your platform. Naturally, fans are saying, you know what, do we have more of a chance of the Champions League? It's a cup game. It's who turns up on the day. Like, should we put our eggs into that basket? Do you think we can win the champs? Talk to me.
I don't think we can sort of just put all our eggs in that basket, you know, because we are still in the title race and there are still plenty of points to play for. It's 39 points still to play for in the Premier League. So you can't just say, right, we'll turn our attention and focus solely on the Champions League. I think it's going to be tough for us because, again, we don't have the firepower. And when you get to the knockout stages of the elite competition in Europe, you need that quality. You need a Saka. You need even someone like Kai Havertz, who I know divides opinion a little bit. But, you know, if you can stick the right ball in the box, he can head that ball into the top corner. You know,
we the winning goal in the champs once upon a time.
Yeah, in the Champions League final against Man City. You know, so the guy has some pedigree in that regard. So I think it is going to be really, really tough because the more the further you progress, the better the teams become, generally speaking, and the more difficult it is to break them down. The only thing I would say is that maybe the strong teams, the strongest teams, are strongest in attack. So if you think about Real Madrid, if you think about Liverpool, even if you think about Bayern Munich, if you think about Barcelona, where are they really, really strong? And
it's in their front three.
Yeah, it's in their front three or front fives or front sixes,
yeah.
midfield, and what they have in those areas of the pitch is really, really strong. But maybe they're not quite as good at the back as you would expect. So that might balance things out a little bit, because I think what we are as well is very, very strong at the back and very strong in midfield. So we have that, but we don't necessarily have those attacking players that might make the difference. But you just never know. You never know with knockout football. You never know with knockout competitions. Somebody goes through, somebody scores a goal, somebody gets knocked out. That makes it a little bit easier for you to progress, and you just never know. I mean, think about the team we got to the Champions League final with.
Yeah, that whole run, let alone what we played the final with. You're right.
Exactly.
I think everyone remembers Real Madrid away.
Yeah,
and the makeshift defense we had there.
I was there that night. It was an amazing game.
Man.
It was brilliant display, and like the back four of Boué, Touré, Senderos, and Flamini at left back, that got us all the way to the final. Is incredible. So you just can never really tell. I just worry a little bit that when you're facing elite forward players like Mbappe, like what Bellingham can do for Real Madrid,
Vinicius and whatnot.
Yeah, Vinicius, Rodrigo. I mean, what we
wish we had a couple of them, man.
Yeah, even one of those right now would be very useful to us, wouldn't it? So I think they probably have a better chance than us, but who knows? You got to go into these cup competitions and play them, I think, differently than you would play Premier League games, because you can sort of apply your tactics over the two legs, home and away, and see if you can work out a way to beat these teams, or at least negate some of their strengths. And if you score a scabby goal and go through 1-0 over the course of two legs,
happy as Larry, man.
Nobody's complaining.
And I think you're right. And because I always have this conversation with my friends, it's like, it sounds dumb because we're second in the league and, all the records are quite positive. I do think the way we kind of set up, I do think in a weird way, it's kind of more set up to European football, but I don't really have a leg to stand on or any evidence with that. I just feel that is the case, because 9 times out of 10 teams don't just sit back and low blocks. It's not that they don't care about Arsenal. It's like, okay, Arsenal are a good side, but we're going to show our thing as well. In the Premier League, it feels 9 times out of 10, they know our brand of football. They know the problems we can possess. Deep blocks, low blocks units, be, rigid. You've got half a chance against us. And whether we're able to break that down is a completely other thing. I want to ask you about Mikel Arteta. Like, where do you feel, what's your feelings on the manager? And also, I'd want to add a tiny bit more of that question. I think everyone can see the man's a good manager. If he was to get sacked tomorrow, he would not be short of offers. I know that's going to ruffle a few feathers, right? But he is a good manager. If I look at it under the guise of getting over the line, like, how long do we persist with Arteta before he's able to get over the line, and we try something different?
I mean, that's a $64,000 question, man. I really don't have the answer. My feeling on Arteta is I think he's done an amazing job at Arsenal compared to where we are now to where we were. I completely understand frustration about not getting over the line, about coming close. I think maybe there would be a little less frustration if we had a slightly better record in the cups.
I agree with that.
For me,
get credit in the bank.
For me, the area I would be more critical about Mikel Arteta is the cups rather than the league, because we challenged for the league and then we fell away. We lost Saliba. We had to bring in Rob Holding. It didn't really work. We all know that.
Don't remind me, man.
We went out and we addressed that problem. We solved that problem. We were unfortunate because Jurriën Timber got injured, but for the most part, we solved that defensive problem where we weren't as reliant, on let's say a player who wasn't quite up to the level. We came so close in the league last season, 2 points. I've got no real complaints. I've got no real complaints about what we do and how competitive we are in the Premier League. Would I love to see us get over the line? Absolutely. Could we have done a bit more in the transfer market to get us a goal or two, that might make this season a little bit more competitive? Sure, no problem. I'm with that. For me, the criticism would be the cups, because we go out too early in the cups, or, we get to a semi-final of the Carabao Cup this season and we just don't perform at all over the course of 2 legs against Newcastle, a team I think we should be more than capable of beating. I watched Newcastle last week against Man City, and they were absolutely.
They only turn up against us, man.
Yeah, I mean it's annoying, but that's our problem, right? That's our problem to deal with. So I think if you're to sack Arteta tomorrow, one, any big club in Europe would take him, really. And two, I think we're much more likely to end up with a manager who's a bit more Unai Emery than Mikel Arteta, if that makes sense.
I like the way you put that. It makes sense.
I don't mean it in terms of their character or personality, but what they're capable of and what they can build, and how capable they are of building a team. I think he's got some questions to answer. I think between him, the club, the executives, the sporting director, whoever that might be when we get a new one of them, they've really, really got to focus on the forward line. They've underinvested in that forward line. I think that is probably what stems a lot of the frustration, because other clubs, they go out and they spend a fortune on forwards. Do they all work? No. But do they have depth and quality? Yes. And we have some of that, there's no question, but not enough, So I think those are the big questions that he has to answer. But for me, as long as we are really, really competitive in the Premier League and challenging for the title, I want Arteta to be there, because I do think there is this sort of thing within him that he will not give up until he gets it done, until he gets that trophy and achieves what he wants to achieve for this football club. And I think that is that's not something you can replicate very easily, even though there might be
he's 5 years deep. There's an emotional pull to want to get over the line.
Of course, but there are other coaches around Europe who don't necessarily have that same connection. And people say, well, look, Arne Slot doesn't have the connection with Liverpool, and he's come in, he's doing it in his first season, which is great. But, again, I think people are just overlooking the fact that this was a Liverpool team that for the most part, with more or less the same personnel, or at least the core of that personnel, were challenging Manchester City season after season after season. So it's not like he's come in and done waved his magic wand and made everything brilliant at Liverpool when it was crap.
There's been a base.
Yeah, of course. With really, really good players like Van Dijk, one of the best central defenders that the Premier League has ever seen. Mo Salah, one of the best attacking players the Premier League has ever seen. And we now have to talk about Mo Salah in the same kind of breath that we talk about Thierry Henry, and we talk about Alan Shearer, and we talk about
they're great.
As one of the great players in Premier League history, So when you sort of supplement that with players like Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson, I know he's not a glamour guy, but these are very good players, and Luis Diaz and Jota. I know he has his injury problems, but just a reliable attacking player. They've got a lot going on for them, Liverpool. So I'm okay with Arteta. I know people get frustrated, but I've seen a lot worse at Arsenal, and I can envisage a lot worse under somebody else. So I really hope, for him and for all of us, that he does manage to get things over the line. I think the club are happy with him. I think they will continue to invest in him and his teams, and we got to hope that over the next couple of seasons we can win those big trophies, because I think that's what he wants more than as much as any of us. I think that is absolutely what he wants.
I mean, you're bang on the money with what he wants, because I mean, us Arsenal fans were kind of not necessarily that we're happy just to talk about stats, but there's plenty of stats that paint us in a good light. Whenever Arteta's asked about it in the press conference, he obviously bigs up the team, but he says the reality is we want to get over the line. And kind of going back to what you said earlier in relation to the players, I don't think anyone can be more upset than the players. Yes, we're fans and we'll be fans long after these players depart, but they're the ones that are kind of living and breathing these moments that have to, that sense of disappointment has to fester. You said a lot of talking points there, and I kind of want to hold on a couple because I think they're quite interesting. You mentioned like Arteta's kind of got stuff that he personally could do better. What would you say that would be the case? And like, why do you think his record since winning the FA Cup in the Cups just hasn't been good enough?
I think that, there's a combination of things. One was if you go back through the FA Cup exits, one was just a really terrible game against Nottingham Forest.
Oh, don't remind me.
where we're basically starting Charlie Patino in midfield. We just didn't have a squad that day.
Tavares was out there. It's a
Yeah,
problem
and we
itself.
well, for half an hour or so he was, and then he got
Yeah.
kicked off, if you remember. So we we didn't have the squad, but we also played really badly, right? That can happen in a cup tie. Cup ties can be like that. The next season, I think we won our third round game. They got Man City in the fourth round, lost that 1-0. It was like
Fair enough, really.
goal. So it was like Man City. The next game, last season, it was Liverpool, if you remember. And it
You couldn't
was
put the ball in the net.
it was that little period where we were playing all right, like that West Ham game that we lost, where we dominated the game and just.
I think that's why we didn't win the league that game.
Yeah. Well, that one, I mean, there are a couple, you could pick a couple that season as well. So, I mean, your mileage may vary, or you can pick whichever game that annoys you the most as the
I
one.
think it's that actually.
It could be that one for me as well, because, we just did everything except put the ball in the back of the net. So we had that little period. It was Fulham, West Ham, and then Liverpool. And then we went on the Dubai trip. Then we came back and won like 16 out of 18. This season, I've completely gone blank on who we went out of the FA Cup to. Oh, it was Manchester United.
I was hoping you would remember, man.
I remember. Yeah,
the worst team to go out to with the FA Cup, really.
That is a downfall of our own making, no question. Missed the penalty. Played against 10 men for 45 minutes at least or more. Because they went down to 10 men. Then there was extra time. We couldn't break them down, couldn't get the ball in the back of the net. That one is completely our fault. We have to own that, or Mikel Arteta.
Yeah, we have to hold that
one. Again, is it a slightly freaky, crazy cup tie? Yeah, but that's on us. So I don't think it's a case that he hasn't taken the cups seriously. I think the from everything that he says in his press conference, every game matters to him, and every cup matters, and every trophy matters, and he wants to win all of them. But maybe we just haven't had enough quality over the course of the few years to make those things happen.
Definitely in the early days.
Yeah, and even this season, maybe I feel like some of our problems this season are because we haven't had enough on the bench to change games. We laugh about how many left backs we have, right?
Yeah, because we don't want to cry.
It's sort of not funny either, where with all due respect to like Kivior, who's like a backup central defender as well, right? But you have Calafiori on the bench when Lewis Skelly is starting. You've got Kieran Tierney, you've got Zinchenko. Would you swap two of those guys for like a winger and a striker?
1,000,000%. I'll just swap them before you even finish that sentence, man.
Yeah, man. Me too. So that's been, I think, our big problem this season. I know some of it is injuries, but you can also say we had the chance in January maybe to do something and chose not to do it for whatever reason. And at this point, you've probably had that discussion, and I've had that discussion on
numerous times.
So like we I don't think we need to go into the nuts and bolts of it, but has it been a problem? Yeah, for me, it's been a problem where the balance of the squad and the balance of the options, you can't always win a game with your starting 11. You have to have your bench. You have to have different ways of approaching games and game situations. And we haven't had the variety, I think, to help us enough. So maybe that explains a little bit why the Cups haven't been as successful. I mean, the Newcastle one, we shouldn't be losing 4-0 on Newcastle on aggregate.
Terrible, man. Terrible. I didn't think I could be, quite frankly, more pissed off in the second leg than I was in the first. I know there was probably an element of tired legs and things of that ilk, but St. James's Park, if there is a ground you need to turn up in the Premier League, I know it's in the League Cup, it's then in it. And I just think Mikel Arteta was tactically outcoached on the night against Eddie Howe. The players all lost their individual battles. It was just terrible from us. And like you said, we're just gonna have to hold that and let that fester and use it to fuel us next season. You kind of alluded to it, yeah. And I know you don't really want to speak about it, but where you look at the last two transfer windows, the summer and January, do you think it was a missed opportunity? And like, where do you, obviously you're not a fly on the wall, but like, where do you point the blame? Because some say Arteta was given options, he didn't take them. Some say the boards let him down. Is it a collection of things? Like, where are you at in the last two windows?
I mean, I do think it is a collection of things. I think, it's not, it's not just a case that, I mean, I think Mikel Arteta has absolutely been backed because he really wanted Calafiori and he got Calafiori, and he really wanted Mikel Merino and he got Mikel Merino. So he's been backed in the transfer market. For me, the big frustration about January was the fact I think we got the summer wrong.
You're not alone. I agree.
With all due respect to Raheem Sterling, I think if he is the guy you're bringing in at like 11 o'clock on transfer deadline day, something hasn't gone right.
Something's gone wrong,
strategy, right? Yeah, something has gone wrong. That's not anyone's idea of like a good deal, right?
Even Edu's comments about we didn't plan to do it tells you everything.
Yeah, exactly. They wanted a striker in the summer. They sort of half looked at Sesko, as we know, and then he signed the new deal. But after that, there weren't really any links to attacking players. I know Mikel Arteta is a big fan of Nico Williams at Athletic Bilbao, so his name was mentioned, but I don't think there was any serious push to try and bring him in. But ultimately, we did that deal on the deadline day, and it wasn't a good deal, despite the fact Chelsea are still paying most of his wages. I feel
only positive.
I feel a bit sad watching him, to be honest, because he was a very, very good player, and now I think he's the legs have gone. Yeah, the legs have gone, and it's sad to see because he's doing it in our shirt, and you'd much rather see him play that badly in a Chelsea shirt or a Man City shirt or a Liverpool shirt or whatever it is, right? So when we get to January, I don't think you can spend your way out of that bad summer in January without really hamstringing yourself for the summer ahead.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that was my feeling on it overall. I still think we were remiss not to do something, simply because the window closed, Martinelli got injured, Havertz got injured, and everyone went, well, you brought that on yourselves.
You've got Moreno playing up front now, so we are in a bit of self-inflicted issues.
Exactly. But I understood why, if they were going to spend big money on a striker, they weren't going to, I don't want to say waste money in January. I just think it makes it so much more difficult because the players, when you're a team as good as we are, and we've said this, we're a good team, we're second in the league. When you're as good as we are, the pool of players who can really improve you gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
Facts.
So those players are never, ever available in January, ever. You can talk about players that we've brought in who've helped us in January, and you can say maybe Arshavin was one. Adi Bayor was a player we brought in January who helped make us better, but he was like scratching around at Monaco at that point. He wasn't like really going.
He wasn't a household name like that.
He wasn't a household name.
Aubameyang had a foot out the door when we signed him, which obviously helped us.
Yeah, Nacho Monreal was a great signing in January, but he's a left back playing at Malaga. You know, he's not like a top player. You know,
not trying to buy Real Madrid's left back at the time or whoever.
Yeah, so I think we messed up the summer, and that made January really, really tough. And the knock-on effect of January plus those injuries is us being where we are right now, with Mikel Merino probably starting our next game as a centre forward.
Rightly so. He got a brace, man. And like you said, Sterling, he's the best option at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. And that's, you know, if you back in August, if we were sitting here and I said to you, in February, we're going to be starting Mikel Merino as our striker because he's the only guy fit and available to do the job, you would be saying, what is this nightmare you're giving me?
Yeah. What are you talking about? Please not.
How the hell did we get there?
Yeah, how did we get here?
What happened? But of course, we've lived it. We've experienced it. We've all lived it. And we all know why we are where we are right now. And I think the only thing we can do is hope that he can continue to deliver. Because, you know, I mentioned Sterling, but the performance against Leicester on Saturday,
horrible.
You just can't pick a guy again if he plays like that. And I'm sorry for him, but you know, we have to think about ways of maximizing our chances of winning the game against West Ham on Saturday. And I don't think that is with him in the team from the start. I don't even think that if we badly need a goal on Saturday with 20 minutes to go, I'm not confident that he's a guy who can bring.
You're looking at our left backs, as you said before, Sterling, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're looking at Kieran Tierney maybe coming on, or Zinchenko coming on, or as I've said elsewhere, you know, Calafiori can be like an attacking substitution because of what he brings the team and was involved in our
And how he
second
behaves,
goal.
yeah.
Yeah, the second goal, the run he made forward was a big part of the second goal against Leicester. So he is somebody who could change your attacking dynamic, but in not the way people think, you've got to bring on a winger or a striker. Our way of doing it might be to bring on a left back who plays a little bit further forward than Lewis Skelly plays if he starts on Saturday.
Like Tierney, a more traditional fullback, stretch the team, kind of attack in that regards. I think, as you kind of touched on it, it's like we wish we weren't in this scenario and wasn't necessarily talking about Tierney playing in the attacking sense of Calafiori, but here we are. Do you think not having a sporting director or not having a long-term sporting director, because it was Jason Ater, do you think that's played any part in why we didn't act in January? And then how do you feel about the summer? Because we'll probably appoint someone, but at this moment in time, us fans got no clue.
I can't imagine it was helpful. I don't know if it was a big problem, but I don't think it could have been helpful. Because I think with Jason Ato, right, he might end up getting the job.
I think he will.
I think he might as well. Because I think if you bring somebody in from the outside, they're not going to be able to join until June or July.
We've already started our homework by then.
Yeah, you better have your plans in place by the end of the season. You want to start moving on things as quickly as you can. So somebody who's coming in from the outside is going to have to get up to speed very, very quickly. I think what maybe an issue in January was that Jason Ato probably, I would say almost definitely, had no authority, right?
100%.
Was he there to do some of the work? Yeah. Is he capable of doing the work? I think he probably is, because otherwise
he's not a decision maker.
It wouldn't be. Yeah, but he didn't have the authority of Edu, who'd been there for since 2019 as the football director of football or whatever it was, and then became sporting director, which was in charge of all aspects of the club, right? So Edu had that authority and was in a position where maybe in that window he says, I'm putting my foot down. We're going to bring this guy in on loan for 6 months. Maybe he's not the best player in the world, but he's somebody who might give us something, right? Whereas I don't think Jason Ato had that ability or authority. I don't know if Edu would have done that, but I think he was capable of doing that if he felt like
I agree.
So I don't think it was helpful going forward. Like you, I think it might well be Jason Ato. I know they're going through a fairly rigorous recruitment process right now. I think there's a external experts or recruitment company involved in sort of sourcing and doing the interviews and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see who they come up with. From what Mikel Arteta says and how he says it, he seems to think Jason Ato is, a very good guy and capable of doing the job. It's about maybe having somebody who is public facing, who can deal with other clubs, who has that kind of character or charisma or personality that you associate with a club like Arsenal. Whatever people think about Edu, he was an invincible, played for Brazil, worked with Brazil, knew people in the game. Maybe
Got
he was
a fantastic new gig as well. Clearly rated within the world of football, regardless of what fans might say.
Maybe a little too close to one or two agents, and that sort of restricts your thinking
100%.
in that sense, right? But at the same time, really charming guy, knew what he was talking about, had a connection to the club, had the experience. So if you want to buy a player and you ring up some club and it's like, hey, it's Edu from Arsenal. Everyone knows who Edu.
Everyone knows who that is. Yeah.
If you ring up and you say, at this moment, you say, hi, I'm Jason Ato from Arsenal. They're going, who?
Yeah, who?
Now, he could forge his way, right? He could become like a Monchi or somebody like that who did such good work at Sevilla that, he's now at Aston Villa and everyone knows.
And he's world-renowned now, essentially.
Exactly. So maybe Jason Ato is at the point in his career where, he's about to make that step forward and he's about to become that guy that people know. But we don't know that yet. We've got no clue as fans. So we just have to hope that whoever's doing it and doing the homework and laying the groundwork between now and the summer is capable of doing it. That is, as far as we know, Jason Ato. And let's hope that he is as highly regarded as some of the people inside the club seem to think he is. And the proof of that may be in the summer when we go back into the market with some money at our disposal and hopefully bring in a forward or two.
I'm with you, man. I mean, I would like to, it would be romantic if, he was to forge his own way and become like this world-renowned kind of sporting or technical director in his own right. It'd be interesting to see. I got a bit of 2 questions on that. Like, why do you think Edu left? And do you think, because there was questions with Arsenal fans that Arteta probably had a bit too much power beyond being a manager. Now, if I look at the power dynamic now, if you've got Jason Ito, who's not Edu, and you've got Arteta, I wonder how they look at it. So, like, do you think he's got too much power in that regards? And like, why do you think Edu left in the first place?
It's a great question. I don't know. I don't know that there's any scandal. Do you know what I mean? I don't know that
it was just a career choice.
Yeah, like he's been offered a a big role by the guy who owns Nottingham Forest and Olympiacos, and they want to pursue this multi-club model, and that could be just a really, really interesting and challenging job for Edu. Sweet gig that pays very well.
It's life.
Yeah, we all have jobs, and people change companies all the time. You might be really have a connection with one. So I don't know. I mean, there might be something. Maybe Arteta has too much power. I genuinely, I can't say.
You wish you could be a fly on the wall, really.
Sure, yeah, you'd love to be a fly on the wall and be in those meetings. The one thing I would say is that, like, the previous summers to this one, I think we've got a lot right.
The Declan Rice summer, I agree.
Timber
came in, Raya came in, Rice done all right.
Yeah, and the ones before that, when you're bringing in players like Odegaard, when you're bringing in Ben White, when you're bringing in even Ramsdale, Raya, where we had questions about, is that the right thing? It's turned out to be good.
Fact.
I do wonder if maybe last summer was one where, because I remember seeing a story in the Brazilian press in August of last year about Edu and
then look at it planned out
Olympiacos, and it's like, there's no way.
You put it with paper talk rumors at first, and then
but obviously somebody got word of something from someone, so maybe that was brewing for a little while, and maybe that's why. I'm not saying he took his eye off the ball or he didn't do his job as well as he can, but maybe there was just
he was out.
Yeah, he knew that once the window was closed, he was going to make a decision to go somewhere else. And I'm not, it might be subconscious. I don't think he deliberately did a bad window for Arsenal or anything like that, but maybe that synergy wasn't there between Arteta and Edu, because I think from what they've said, they've worked very closely. They've been close. Maybe they both knew what was going on, and that played a part in what happened in the summer, because I think you can see, not just from Arsenal, but in football in general, when all the pieces of the puzzle aren't working together, bad decisions get made. A football
too many chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah, or not enough chefs, or one.
At this moment,
chef's out the back having a smoke, and he takes his eye off.
Still need to be peeled, man.
Exactly. It all got burned a little bit, So maybe that's what it was. So I'd love to be able to sit here and tell you, well, this is exactly the reason why. But like everybody else, I'm just sort of speculating from the outside.
I got to ask you then with Edu, because I know football's quite emotional. A lot of fans say, "Oh, he left us mid-season. He left us in the lurch." Like, does he owe anybody anything? Because as you said, you got a sweet gig, multi-club structure. You could look at it as career progression. For me, as a fan, naturally, you don't want to see that, but it is what it is, in my opinion. You've been offered something, you're going to go and do it, innit? Opportunities are once in a lifetime. But where do you stand on that?
I mean, I think if you're going to lose your sporting director just before the January window, isn't that great? But it was November, so it wasn't like December 31st, and everyone's going, what are we going to do? I think Edu built, at Arsenal, a different scouting structure, a different recruitment department and operation. You see the videos of, when we make a signing and there's all the people that were there working on deadline day or working behind the signing. It's like, administrative people.
It's a much bigger team than they lead on, essentially.
People, right? So he built all that, and his departure is obviously important, but those structures still remain. So it's not like everything falls apart without Edu.
Exactly.
The other thing I would say is it's much better to lose your sporting director then than in May. or
Yeah,
cheer
yeah,
him.
because
And he turns
yeah,
around and says,
I'm
end of the
off, lads.
season, yeah, cheers. Have a nice summer. It's like, oh, well, hang on. Now what do we do? So I think it does give you a little bit of time to prepare. I don't have any ill will whatsoever towards Edu. I think he did good work at Arsenal. Like anybody, we can look and we can critique and say, could he have done things better? Probably. But I still think he did a good job. He worked with Mikel Arteta to build a team that's been really, really impressive. And I've got no ill will or anything like that towards him. I think the club probably knew for a little while that this was going on. So it's up to them to deal with those situations. People come and people go in football, managers, coaches, players, executives, finance directors, commercial people, they all come and they all go. It's
The industry.
it's the job of the club to make sure that they cope with that as best as they can.
So then, with that being said, yeah, how do you look at the summer? Because there's a lot of things I agree with in isolation. What people say, or Arsenal fans, and that Arteta only wants certain players. There's, we only want players that can improve the squad. I second that. I agree with all of that. But I look in the summer. If Sesko's your guy and you don't get him, fair enough. But I can't go into next season not seeing a striker, potentially a left winger. I think with Partey probably departing central midfield, and probably some fans would say a lot of other areas. But do you feel there's no margin for error per se in the summer, and certain things we hear in terms of a fallout can't be the case heading into next season?
I think it is a huge summer, no question. The forward line needs investment.
Needs surgery,
No
man.
two ways. Yeah, I mean, we still score a lot of goals. Are we missing that guy? An Alexander Isak, right? That guy who can do that. Yeah. But then most teams in the Premier League are missing a guy like that. And Newcastle are kind of lucky to have a player of that quality at their
That everybody
club.
likes.
Yeah, and look, to be fair, they put the money down. He's delivered for them. If they finish outside the Champions League or outside the European places, I don't think he will want to hang around with his level of talent. Does
Hopefully
that mean
he can get
Arsenal
involved.
can get him? I don't know. I mean, I think Liverpool or Newcastle are going to look for a lot of money. But I do think, the forward line has to have the investment that everywhere else has had. We've spent a load on goalkeepers, spent a load on midfielders, spent a load on defenders. Have we spent a load on forwards? No.
Not really.
Not
No,
really. So that's an issue to address. I think central midfield, I think Partey and Jorginho will go. There's all the talk of Zubimendi. I'd love that. I think he's a great player. I really, really like him. If we can get that deal done, and you've got Declan Rice, and you've got Mikel Merino, and maybe you're looking at, I don't know where Ethan Nwaneri is going to end up, but maybe he's a guy who can end up in midfield as well. That'd be a great signing. But they cannot ignore the forward line and the investment that's required in there, because I think Jesus is going to struggle to come back. Sterling.
Second ACL, damn.
Sterling will be gone. Yeah, it's a really tough one. Sterling will be gone. And, Trossard, who I like, is not getting any younger. He's got a year left on his contract. So you got to, even if he stays, you've got to future-proof a little bit, right? So there's the investment. The other thing that they've got to mind this summer are contracts.
Oh, mate, I'm so happy you said that. I was going to ask you. That's something that is scaring me. I mean, I don't know why I'm getting scared. Normally, as a fan, you do. But, Gabriel Magalhaes playing out of his skin. Saliba is Saliba. Bukayo Saka, and I'm sure there's others. We need to get those contracts. That's why I initially asked you about the sporting director. It's like, how many of these things can be... They can be done without that, but how much can be done when you haven't got that man in place? We've got a lot to do. There's no margin for error, man.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And look, this is a consequence of having some of the best players in the world. We get stressed and anxious about contracts.
Yeah.
It was the same when we had Vieira. It was the same when we had Bergkamp. It was the same when we had Henry.
Facts.
Every summer. Didn't necessarily play out online in the same way it did because, the internet was not as developed, but you'd see it on the back pages of the tabloids. You'd see it on CFAX and Teletext, if people remember those things, and you'd see Real Madrid and Barcelona and the big Italian clubs. They're all after Vieira. They're all after Bergkamp. They're all after Henry. They're all after Pires. This is a consequence of having the best players in the world. And we have some of those best players in the world. But again, this comes down to the club convincing those players that their ambitions can be realized. I think maybe the two things that we just spoke about go hand in hand. Because if you're Bukayo Saka, or you're William Saliba, or you're Gabriel, and you're thinking about, can I win the trophies that I want to win at Arsenal? Real Madrid, what a club. Barcelona, big club. I know they're a bit of a shambles off the pitch,
but
and
still
probably will be
Barca.
for a while. But, you know, they have that sort of aura, you know, of big European club. I think if you're them and Arsenal go out this summer and they bring in those additions to the forward line that make us more dangerous, more potent, more exciting, more attacking, you know, that
Better.
little bit of elite quality. Is it easier for you? And you know, let's say you add a Zubimendi in midfield there, and you're saying to them, you've got Zubimendi, you've got Rice, you've got Odegaard, you've got Saka, you've got Nwaneri, you've got Lewis Skelly in the team, and you've got these, you know, you've got these forwards now that we've brought in. We've invested like 120,
Believe in our
140
project.
million in the forward line to get us the goals that we need, not just to win the games that we normally win, but to beat Villa, to beat Fulham, to beat Newcastle, to
Those
go
fine
the
margins.
distance in the Champions League. When you're playing Bayern Munich away from home and they score one goal, it shouldn't be the end of the world. We've got the firepower to deal with that. This is what we've done. This is our demonstration to you guys that we want you to stay with us and win those trophies. You've got a much better chance of convincing them to sign a new deal if you show that kind of ambition in the transfer market. So I think the two things go hand in hand. And, you know, when you get to the 2-year point, you start to get a little bit worried. When you get to 12
Yep.
months, when you get to 12 months, you're sort of clenching, aren't you? You know, but I think what they do in the transfer market this summer will go a long way to deciding whether or not those guys want to sign new contracts at Arsenal. So let's hope, you know, that they put their money where their mouth is, and then that allows you the luxury of saying to Saka and Saliba, it's easy for you to stay here. It's easy. We'll give you the money. We love you. Commit to us. We'll commit to you, and let's go win some stuff together, you know?
I think you're bang on the money, man. I think, you know, they're obviously going to be paid handsomely. They deserve their wages. As you said, you know, it's one thing improving players, which the boys have been improving. It's another thing bringing in quality. And I think you're bang on the money. I would say, you know, and I think you... Oh, what happened to me there? Sorry. I think you made a good point kind of earlier about you know, the players, how the players feel, because I remember Declan Rice, I think it was in January, I can't remember the game, but in January he said, I'm sure the manager will bring in players because we had to play Tierney left wing. Now I don't want to read too much into it, but that lets me know the players might be thinking, bloody hell, we're trying to win the title, key players are injured, how do we go about it? And obviously this summer it will be a World Cup year. I don't know if that tailors into anybody's thinking, and I do think there's something to believe in here. But like, unfortunately, you look at Declan Rice and Saka in particular. For England, you finish second. Obviously, for Arsenal, you finish second. And the cups you won an FA Cup, but the cups have been filled with stress. So it's like, how long do you kind of want to feel like that per se? And I'm sure Saka's got England players in his ear. Definitely all them French players where Saliba's concerned are 100% in his ear. But as you said, it comes with the territory. You got good players. Good players are always going to be nice, isn't it? They're always going to be wanted. We're always going to have to try hold on to them. So you're going to have to pay them appropriately. Kind of like my last two questions for you then before I let you get out of here, my guy. You mentioned Lewis Skelly and you mentioned Ethan. Yeah, just how big of an impact have them two made? And I don't want to be that guy, but it's just a bit of fun. Like, who's made the bigger impact out of the two of them?
Whoa.
It's difficult, isn't it?
I'm going to get slaughtered here regardless of what I say, right? I think it's probably, I would say Lewis Skelly, because he sort of came up on the blind side a little bit, right? We all knew he was a good player, and I was on the US tour in the summer, and I saw him play and was really, really impressed. But all the eyes were on Ethan Nwaneri. All the eyes were on, you know, what this guy can do in the attacking third. And I think when you look at his numbers, they're ridiculous. Nwaneri's numbers versus the amount of minutes he's played in terms of goals and assists, and you know, the way
a young man, brilliant.
He's unbelievable. I love both of them. But I think maybe Lewis Skelly, having come in and just sort of establishing himself, I think it was against Monaco was his first start. It's a big Champions League game. He hasn't looked back since.
Yeah, so you see the papers and the tabloids with him. His life comes past that Lewis Skelly, really.
Yeah, that's exactly it, you know, and we can all see that for what it is, and Arsenal fans can see it for what it is, and you know, we're there to sort of counteract some of this nonsense.
Counteract the nonsense is 100%.
In the papers. But I would say at this moment in time, Lewis Skelly is the one that's maybe made the most impact because people weren't expecting it. If I'm going to take it forward, who do I expect more from? Nwaneri.
Naturally, your attackers.
Yeah, because they will deliver things like goals and assists, which really change games. That's take nothing away from what defenders do and what Lewis Skelly does or what fullbacks do these days, because they play the game completely differently than they were asked to a few years ago. And I think he will be a long-standing player for Arsenal and for England. I expect him to get called up to the England squad next month.
I'll be surprised if they don't.
I'm not sure I like it yet because he is only 18. I kind of prefer for him to have those 2 weeks
take
off.
Take time and
his performances. If you're Thomas Tuchel and you're the England manager, you're going, I'm picking that guy.
Especially left back for England. There's not many.
Well, exactly. There's Chilwell or Luke Shaw's always injured, and I don't know who else there is.
Lewis Hall. But if I'm Lewis Skelly, I back myself against Lewis Hall, to be fair.
Absolutely. Me too. Lewis Hall's a good player, but Lewis Skelly's been better.
There's not much in it.
From distance, But I think what Nwaneri has is really special. That ability to make things happen. His ball striking with both feet. I was talking about this on my podcast on Monday with James. It's like, I didn't know he had that.
He's been working on his weaker peg as well.
With his left foot, yeah, I knew it. With his right foot, when he crashed that off the post, I was like, oh, okay.
We've got a player here.
I already thought we got a player, but we've got a player who defenders now don't know which way to go with. That old thing, with Arjen Robben, where they said, well, you know what Arjen Robben is going to do? He's going to cut in on his left foot. Everyone knew it. They still couldn't stop it half the time. Nwaneri, a bit like Saka as well, can go on both sides. And that really does cause defenders problems. So I think we're just so blessed to have both of them, for both of them, as good friends as well, to have grown up at the same academy level. The romantic element of it is brilliant. But ultimately what we've got, and let's not forget that people accuse Mikel Arteta of not liking young players, or he hates young players. I think
he only made history with Ethan when he initially made his debut a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think what we've learned is that Arteta has no problem playing young players when the young players are good enough and ready.
Yeah, he's not on what Arsene Wenger was on, with all due respect, in that Wenger kind of would give everybody, quote unquote, a chance. It feels for me with Arteta, if you're not top class / elite level, I haven't really got time for it. And he's allowed to do that. Like, you can't just, people want everything. They want us to compete. They want no rotation, but they want rotation. They want a million young players, but they want star players. And as me and you both know, that's just not how football works. Like, where do you think Lewis Skelly and Ethan end up long term in terms of their positioning? Because Lewis Skelly can play in midfield. Ethan can play all about the shop.
Oh, that's a great one. When Saka's back, we're trying to figure out how do you get Saka and Nwaneri into the same team. Obviously, they can't play in the same position. Does Nwaneri move left? Does he play as the left 8? Do you shift Odegaard across and play Nwaneri in the Odegaard position? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I think it will become clear in time. Clearly, he is a guy who's got the ability to make an impact in the attacking third. I think Lewis Skelly is probably going to be at left back for a while.
There's been Ashley Cole comparisons already.
Yeah, if let's say we bring in Zubimendi in the window, and Zubimendi plays and Rice plays as a left 8, and you've also got Marino as a left 8, and sometimes even Kai Havertz as that left 8. I think. Oh, you're gone. Are you still there?
Oh. What happened there? Technical difficulties. Can
you just sort of disappeared. So
man, I don't know what happened with my computer there. Sorry about that, man. But
that's okay. I think Lewis Skelly will play left back for a while, and I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic between him and Calafiori. But I don't worry too much about it. You know what I mean? When good players come through, I don't worry
We need depth.
About it's just I worry when we don't have good players, when we don't have enough options. You know,
Great
this
point.
idea of like, where do we play this guy and this guy and this guy? Don't worry about it. It'll work itself out. You
These
know,
are good problems.
good problems. And if one of the other criticisms of Mikel Arteta is that he hasn't rotated enough, having more good players will allow him to do that. So let's not stress over, is he going to play here? What's going to happen to him? Our good players will play a lot of games.
You
And a
know
lot
Arsenal fans though, man. That's what we
oh,
do.
listen, I know we're all like that, but you know, we try and bring a little bit of calm to things, and just, you know, stress about the things that are actually a problem. Having really good players and we don't quite know where they're going to end up, that's not a problem. That is the smallest issue that we can have right now. And I'm glad we have it, because we've got 150 million worth of talent out of our academy this season. Amazing. Love it.
Like you said, man, it's amazing. Like, again, and it's good conversations. And I the only thing I would say with Ethan, I think he's going to end up as a 10 or an 8. He's clearly looking great on the right wing. I reckon he could play off the left, and I was calling for him to play off the left more when we was in that period where I think Martinelli and Trossard, whichever one went out there, they just weren't doing the business. But as you said, it's a good conversation to have. I just hope with Ethan, the club don't look at it, and there's logic behind it, and they go, do you know what? We might not need to buy a left winger or a winger in total, because we've got one, and that might allow us to do other things. My last question for you then, before I let you get out of here, like, our captain Martin Odegaard, like, I get mocked on my platform as a bit of a joke. They call me an Odegaard apologist, which I am. I think on his day he's amazing, and I do kind of overuse this excuse in that, he's got one of the most complicated roles in that Mikel Arteta system. He has to press, he has to collect it off the goalies from time to time. You know yourself, he does all of that stuff, but I do want to see a bit more. I do think he goes through the motions, just like against Leicester. I know he's had an injury. I know he's got stuff in his personal life. I think the goal scoring's not quite been there. Where are you at with Martin Odegaard?
I can't disagree with you. I think we've seen more from Martin Odegaard than we've got this season. I think, like any player, there are going to be fluctuations in form and fluctuations in end product. I think that ankle injury has affected him. I think it's taken him
a
little while to get back to where he is. I think has he been playing without pain? I'm not sure. I think he can deliver more goals. I think now would be a great time for him to start delivering more goals, because we don't have any strikers, and take some of the burden off Mikel Merino up there. The only thing I would say is, I don't think we're getting Martin Odegaard into the positions from which he scored a lot of his goals. So if you remember,
edge of the area,
that sort of edge of the area, between the edge of the area and the penalty spot, the ball comes back, left-footed shot. He scored a lot of goals like that. Can you remember?
Became a trademark.
Can you remember seeing him in those areas as much this season?
That's a good point. No,
that might be him. It might be him not doing what he's supposed to do, or it might be that things have changed a little bit structurally with this Arsenal team, and the way we play doesn't get him into those positions as much anymore. And I think as well, with let's say Declan Rice in and out of the team a little bit, and injuries to Saka, to other players, I think there's been a bit more responsibility on him deeper in the midfield than there has been on getting him into those areas to score those goals. So yes, I think he can do more. I hope he really delivers some goals between now and the end of the season.
As you said, it'd be a great time.
But I also think you have to look at how we're playing, and is that allowing him to get into those? Is he missing a load of chances? Like, in your mind, is Martin Odegaard missing a load of chances?
He's not getting that many. I think when he does have them, he's not taking them, but I wouldn't say he's missing a lot.
No, exactly. So for me, the issue is somewhere in between those two things. Let's try and get him into those dangerous positions, because his left foot when he's on it is one of the best. So I think he's been impacted by the injury in a fairly substantial way, but I hope that between now and the end of the season he can shake that off and start to score a few goals, because it might be a case that we have to sort of 1-0 our way to a lot of 3 points.
It's looking like such, and rely on our defense and just keep it moving game to game.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you're bang on the money, man. I do think we probably need a bit more creative depth because I think there's been too much of a burden on Odegaard. I don't think Odegaard, I'm not saying he doesn't roll his socks up and his sleeves up and do all of that stuff, but I don't have him down as a player like that. And I just think, you know, when you're the captain and, you know, in the British game, that's how they look at it. It's not that you're set up for failure, but you're very easy to get at, if that kind of makes sense. But as you said, at the end of the day, we need everybody to stand up to be counted. Whoever decides to want to be able to score, and we need people to go through a little purple patch. And for me, it'd be Odegaard. Like I always waffle about Odegaard. I call him the class Weasian. I call him Wonder Guard. I say he's got the best left foot in the league, and I need him to give me something to push my agendas, man. So
yeah, but I mean, the other thing is like this time last year, we also had Fabio Vieira and Emile Smith-Rowe available to if Odegaard wasn't playing as well, you have options. You don't have the option anymore.
We don't have that now.
You don't have the option. So that's another aspect of squad building, but maybe that's a conversation for another day.
It definitely is, man. And on that note, Andrew, man, I appreciate this hour you spent with me, man. You've provided me with a lot of talking points. Can't imagine anyone needs to know because, you know, you're a big business, but let people know they can find you.
Arsblog.com, just everything operates off that. You'll find the blog, the podcast, the news site, our Patreon, everything else you can find. Yeah, exactly. We're even on YouTube, although we don't do it the same way you do.
Yeah, you lot do like animations and that. Yeah, like, I actually like to sit down and watch it. It's kind of weird. I do like to listen, but I like to watch it even though it's cartoony.
Yeah. I know. It's different, but you know, there's people have their strengths and weaknesses, and you know, you're obviously very strong at this stuff. Not necessarily my forte, so we just put the podcast up on YouTube, but you can find us, you know, everywhere. So yeah, come on and have a look if you don't already know.
Exactly, man. And Andrew, hopefully in May, the next time we speak, or, you know, I'd like to do this more recently, but, you know, in May, I hope we win something in it and all the tears are worth it. But on that note, people, let us know your comments, like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to let Andrew get on with his day, man. Thanks for being here, my dude. Come on.
My pleasure. Thanks to you guys as well. Have a good one.
Come on. In a bit, my guy. Peace. Always